When a billionaire father steps into a humble classroom searching for hope, he finds more than just help for his disabled son. He discovers a teacher who changes everything. In a quiet neighborhood just outside Chicago, where the streets are lined with trees and life moves at a gentle pace, there lived a woman named Elena Martinez. She wasn't famous or rich, but she had something even more valuable, a heart full of kindness and a passion for helping kids who others sometimes overlooked. Elena was a special education teacher. Not just any teacher, she was the kind who remembered every child's favorite color, their fears, their dreams, and what made them laugh. She worked at a public school that served children with disabilities, and her classroom was always filled with music, laughter, and the soft hum of learning. For many students, it was the only place they felt truly understood. She had started teaching when she was very young. Right after college, and over the years, she had become known as the miracle worker. Parents would whisper about how she could get through to kids no one else could reach. But Elena never saw herself as anything special. She believed every child had potential. Her job, she thought, was just to find it and help it grow. One of her students was a boy named Noah Langford. He was 8 years old, with big eyes and a smile that could light up a room. He loved toy trains, blueberries, and the sound of wind chimes. But Noah faced challenges most people couldn't imagine. He had cerebral palsy, which made it hard for him to walk, talk, or even hold a pencil. Most days, he used a wheelchair and communicated using pictures or simple sounds. Noah's parents were both successful, but his father, Richard Langford, was especially well known. He was a billionaire, the founder of a huge tech company that made apps used by millions. He had everything money could: buy fancy cars, a mansion, private jets, but none of it seemed to bring him happiness. Richard had grown up poor, working 3 jobs while going to school just to survive. He built his company from scratch, rising to the top through long nights, endless meetings, and a relentless drive to succeed. But success came at a cost. His marriage had ended years ago, and he struggled to connect with his son. He tried hiring tutors, therapists, and private instructors. But nothing ever seemed to work the way he hoped. He loved Noah deeply, but he didn't know how to be the father his son needed. Every time Noah cried out in frustration because he couldn't say what he meant, Richard felt helpless. And every time Noah looked at him with those wide, hopeful eyes, Richard felt like he was failing. That's why he decided to visit Noah's school one morning. Didn't tell anyone he was coming. Not the principal, not the teachers, not even Noah. He just showed up in a plain coat, hoping to watch a class without being noticed. He walked quietly down the hallway until he found the special education wing. The walls were covered with colorful drawings, motivational posters, and photos of smiling kids. There was no fancy technology or expensive equipment, just love and effort poured into every corner. He peeked into a classroom and saw a group of children sitting on the floor, playing with blocks and listening to a woman with curly brown hair and warm eyes. That woman was Elena. She was reading a story, but not just reading. She was acting it out, making funny voices and encouraging the kids to repeat words. Some of them spoke clearly, others used sign language, and some pointed at picture cards, but everyone was included. Everyone was heard. And then Richard saw Noah. His son was sitting near the front, focused and happy, trying to clap along with the other kids. He wasn't frustrated. He wasn't crying. He was smiling. Richard felt something in his chest tighten. He hadn't seen Noah this calm in weeks. He watched as Elena gently placed a tablet in front of Noah. It was an assistive communication device, a tool that helped kids like him speak using images and voice recordings. With her hand on his shoulder, she guided him through the screen, showing him how to press a picture to make the device say a word. "Look," she said softly, pointing to a picture of a dog. "You can say dog all by yourself now." Noah touched the image, and the device said, "Dog," in a cheerful voice. Elena clapped. "Yes, good job, buddy," guggled. A real, honest goodness giggle. Richard stood frozen. Couldn't move. He couldn't breathe. That was the first time he'd ever heard Noah speak without screaming or crying. It was the first time he'd seen him feel proud of himself. He leaned against the wall, blinking back tears. For years, he had thrown money at problems, thinking that if he just paid enough, someone else could fix what was broken. But here was a woman with nothing more than patience, love, and a few tools, doing what no amount of money had been able to do, he realized. In that moment, that maybe, just maybe, this teacher could help his son in ways he never could, and maybe she could change his life too. From that day on, Richard started visiting the school more often. Sometimes he stayed in the hallway, watching from a distance. Other times, he sat quietly in the back of the classroom, unnoticed. He wanted to learn to understand what Alina was doing, how she did it, and why it worked. He watched how she treated each child with dignity, how she celebrated small victories like they were Olympic medals, how she never gave up, even when progress was slow. He listened to the way she talked, not down to the kids, but with them.
Ow.
Like they mattered, like they were important, and slowly, something inside Richard began to shift. He had spent his whole life chasing success, building empires, proving he was strong. Standing in that classroom watching a teacher guide his disabled son with grace and care, he realized strength wasn't about power or wealth. It was about love. It was about showing up every single day and giving your best, even when no one was watching. And for the first time in years, Richard Langford felt like he was finally seeing the world clearly. That afternoon stayed with Richard for days. He couldn't stop thinking about what he had seen, the way Alina made Noah feel like he mattered, like his voice had value even if it came through a screen. That moment when Noah said dog and giggled like he had just discovered magic hit was more than just speech. It was joy. It was hope. It was something Richard hadn't felt in a long time. He went back to his office that evening, but he didn't open any emails or answer any calls. He sat at his desk, staring out the window at the city lights below, replaying the scene over. And over in his mind, his phone buzzed constantly with messages from investors, lawyers, and reporters, but he ignored them all. Instead, he started typing on his laptop, searching for everything he could find about Elena Martinez. What he found surprised him. She wasn't some famous educator or someone who had gone to an Ivy League school. She had grown up in a small town in Texas, raised by a single mother who worked double shifts as a nurse. Her older brother had autism, and she had spent most of her childhood helping take care of him, watching how hard it was for him to be understood, and how much love he gave despite the world not always giving it back had shaped her life. She studied education at a local university, paid for mostly by scholarships and student loans, and then jumped straight into teaching. She had never chased money or fame. She just wanted to help kids like her brother, and now, kids like Noah. Richard read stories from parents whose children had been in her class. They talked about how their kids had started speaking after years of silence, how they had learned to smile again, how they had stopped being afraid of the world because someone finally believed in them. And yet, despite all this, Alina was still working in a classroom that barely had enough supplies. The school had outdated computers, broken chairs, and books that were falling apart. Most of the tools she used, like the communication device she had shown Noah, were bought through crowdfunding or donated by charities. Richard closed his laptop slowly. A strange feeling settled in his chest, something between guilt and admiration. He had so much money, so many resources, and yet here was a woman doing incredible things with almost nothing. He thought about all the expensive therapists he had hired for Noah, all the fancy gadgets he had bought. None of it had done what Alina had done in just a few weeks. The next morning, he called his assistant and canceled all his meetings for the week. He told no one where he was going, just drove back to the school. This time, he didn't hide. In the hallway, he walked right into Elena's classroom while she was helping another student tie their shoes. She looked up, surprised. "Mr. Langford," she asked, standing up, "is everything okay?" Richard nodded, suddenly feeling nervous. He wasn't used to feeling unsure of himself. Usually people were the ones nervous around him. "I need to talk to you," he said simply. Alina glanced at the kids who were busy drawing with crayons at the tables. "Okay, is it about Noah?" He hesitated. "Not exactly." They stepped outside into the quiet hallway, the sounds of laughter and learning behind them. Alina folded her arms, waiting. Richard took a deep breath. "I've been watching you work," he said. "With Noah, with the other kids. And I don't think I've ever seen anyone do what you do." Alina blinked, clearly taken aback. "Thank you," she said cautiously. "I want to help," he continued, "not just financially, not just by writing a check. I want to understand. I want to learn from you. And maybe there's something I can do to support what you're building." Alina studied him carefully. She knew who he was, as everyone did. But she also knew that rich people often showed interest in good causes, only to lose interest after a few weeks. Still, there was something different in his voice, in his eyes. He wasn't trying to impress her. He was asking for permission too. "Be part of this." "I appreciate that," she said gently. "But this isn't about money. It's about connection, about patience, about believing in these kids even when progress feels slow." Richard nodded. "Then teach me over the next few weeks." Richard became a regular presence in the classroom. Didn't sit in the corner anymore. He rolled up his sleeves and helped. He pushed wheelchairs down the hallway. He helped kids eat lunch. He listened when Alina explained how to use the communication devices. He watched how she turned every lesson into something fun and meaningful. One day, he brought a new tablet. For the class, it was faster, easier to use, and had better voice recognition. He handed it to Alina without saying anything. She looked at him for a long moment, then smiled. "Thanks," she said. "We'll put it to good use." But it wasn't until one rainy afternoon that everything changed. Noah was having a rough day. He was tired, frustrated, and struggling to communicate. Alina sat beside him, gently guiding his hand to the screen of his communication device. "Let's try again," she said softly. "You can do it." Noah pressed a picture. The device spoke. "Love?" Alina grinned. "Yes. You love what?" Noah pointed again. Another image lit up. "Mommy." Alina clapped. "Good job, buddy." Noah laughed a full, happy laugh. And leaned into Alina's shoulder. Richard, who had been watching from across the room, felt his heart stop. It was the first time Noah had ever said love, and the first time he had mentioned his mom since she passed away 2 years ago. Tears welled up in Richard's eyes. He turned away quickly, pretending to adjust his coat. Later that day, as Alina was packing up her things, Richard approached her. "That moment today," he said quietly. That was the first time he said love, and the first time he talked about his mom since she died. Alina looked at him, understanding dawning in her eyes. "I want to do more," Richard said. "I want to build something real, something that lasts, something that helps kids like Noah and teachers like you." Alina crossed her arms. "What are you thinking?" "A school," he said. "A special school. It's just for kids with disabilities. Designed the way you see it, with everything. You need everything your students deserve." Alina stared at him, stunned. "You're serious?" she whispered. "I am," he said. "Will you help me build it?" There was a long pause. Then Alina smiled. "Yes," she said. "Let's build it together." And just like that, the idea was born. The idea had taken root like a seed in spring times, small at first, but full of promise. Richard wanted to build a school, not just any school, but one that would change lives, a place where kids like Noah could learn, grow, and feel seen. And he wanted Alina to lead it. At first, she was nervous, excited, yes, but also scared. She had spent years working in a public school with limited resources, doing her best with what she had. Now, someone was offering her the chance to create something entirely new, something perfect. And that was terrifying. What if she failed? What if people thought she wasn't good enough? What if she let the kids down? She told Richard all of this one rainy afternoon as they sat in a small coffee shop near the school. "I don't know if I can do this," she said, stirring her tea even though she wasn't going to drink it. "I'm just a teacher." Richard looked at her across the table, his eyes serious but kind. "You're not just a teacher," he said. "You're the reason my son is starting to talk. I gave him a voice when I couldn't. That makes you more than just a teacher. That makes you someone who changes lives." Alina blushed, looking down at her hands. "But building a school?" she asked. I've never done anything like that before,
Neither have I.
Richard admitted. But I've built companies. From scratch, I've led teams of hundreds. If we work together, we can make this happen. Alina didn't answer right away. She stared out the window, watching raindrops race each other down the glass. Finally, she took a deep breath and looked. Back at him, okay? She said softly. Let's try. That simple word, okay, was the beginning of everything. They started small. Richard hired architects, engineers, and construction workers. He set up a foundation called the Noah Foundation, named after his son, and began fundraising. Alina focused on the vision, the heart of the school. She designed classrooms that felt safe and welcoming. She chose tools that would help kids communicate, move, and learn in ways that worked for them. She dreamed of therapy rooms filled with light and music, playgrounds with swings that could hold wheelchairs, and quiet corners for students who needed a break from the noise of the world. Together, they imagined a place where every child mattered not just academically, but emotionally, socially, physically. But as the plans grew bigger, so did the challenges. First came the money problem. Building a school like this wasn't cheap. Even for a billionaire like Richard, the costs were staggering. There were materials to buy, experts to hire, technology to install. Every time they added a new feature, a sensory room, a speech lab, a garden for outdoor learning, the budget went up. Then came the bureaucracy. Getting permits, approvals, and licenses from the city was like trying to climb a mountain without ropes. They faced delays, rejections, and paperwork that seemed endless. One official told them flatly, "We don't need another special needs school. The system already has enough." Alina felt the sting of those words deeply. It's not about having enough, she told Richard later. It's about having the right support. Kids like Noah deserve more than what's good enough, Richard agreed. But even he was frustrated by how slow things were moving. This should be easier, he muttered one night as they sat. In his office, surrounded by blueprints and legal documents, "It usually isn't," Alina replied gently. "But we keep going anyway." Okay, and they did. They held community meetings to explain their vision. Parents showed up, some with tears in their eyes, thanking them for what they were trying to do. Teachers came too, sharing stories of students who had fallen through the cracks. Volunteers offered to help paint walls or organize supplies. Slowly, a team began to form around them. Still, not everyone was supportive. Some people questioned why a billionaire was suddenly interested in special education. Was it just a publicity stunt? Would the school really last? Would Alina be more than just a figurehead? Others doubted whether such a school was even necessary. "Aren't these kids better off in regular schools?" one reporter asked during an interview. Alina answered calmly but firmly. "They belong everywhere," she said. "But sometimes they need extra help to get there. This school gives them the tools they need to reach their full potential. And once they're ready, they can go anywhere." Even within the educational community, there were critics. Some teachers and administrators saw the project as competition. Others worried it would take funding away from existing programs. Alina tried not to let the negativity get to her, but it was hard. She started doubting herself again. One evening, after a particularly tough meeting with city officials, she sat alone in her car outside the nearly finished school building. It stood tall and proud now, its windows glowing in the dusk. Adieu, Saad. Classrooms waited to be filled with life. She pressed her forehead against the steering wheel and let out a long sigh. What if I'm not good enough for this? She whispered to herself. Just then, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Richard. Asterisk, asterisk, hey. Just checking in. How are you holding up, asterisk? Asterisk, she almost laughed. He always knew when she was struggling. She typed back. Asterisk, asterisk, tired, scared, wondering if I'm in over my head. A few seconds later, his reply came through. You're not alone in this. We're building something beautiful, and it's worth every fight. Asterisk, asterisk, she read the message again, feeling warmth spread through her chest. He was right, building something. Meaningful was never easy, but it was worth it. The next morning, Alina walked into the school site with fresh energy. She met with the design team, made final decisions about furniture and equipment, and even helped pick out the colors for the walls. Meanwhile, Richard worked behind the scenes, reaching out to donors, tech companies, and nonprofits. He used his name and reputation to open doors Alina couldn't reach on her own. Slowly, the pieces came together, but the biggest challenge was still ahead: recruiting staff. Alina wanted only the best teachers, therapists, and aides, people who believed in the mission, people who saw every student as capable and worthy of love. Finding them wasn't easy. Many applicants came because of the money or the prestige, but Alina turned them away. "I don't care how many degrees you have," she told one candidate. "If you don't believe in these kids, you won't last here." She interviewed dozens of people looking for that spark of passion, that fire in their hearts. When she found it, she knew instantly. One woman cried during her interview, telling Alina how her cousin had struggled in school until a teacher finally understood her. Another man brought his own communication device with him. He had grown up using one, and now he wanted to teach others how to use it. Alina hired them both. As the team grew, so did the excitement. Word spread. More parents reached out, asking if their children could enroll. News outlets started covering the story. The school was becoming real, and yet just as everything was coming together, a new problem appeared. A major donor pulled out at the last minute, taking a huge chunk of funding with them. Without that money, they wouldn't be able to finish the building on time, or maybe at all. Alina sat across from Richard in his office, staring at the numbers on the screen. "We're not going to make it," she said quietly. Richard rubbed his temples, clearly exhausted. "We'll find another way," he said, though his voice lacked confidence. Alina shook her head. "There's no time. We promised the kids, promised their families." For the first time, she saw doubt in Richard's eyes. Then slowly he looked at her. "What if we tell our story?" he asked. Alina frowned. "What do you mean?" Mean we stop hiding. We stop letting people wonder what this school is about. We show them Noah. We show them you. We show them what we're fighting for." Alina hesitated. "I don't like being in the spotlight," she admitted. "I know," Richard said. But sometimes the only way to save something beautiful is to let the world see it." Alina thought about it all night. The next day she agreed. Together, they prepared a video. Not a fancy one, just Alina sitting in a classroom, talking about her journey, her hopes, and the kids she loved. Noah was there too. Richard helped him press a button on his communication device. The screen lit up. The voice said, "***, thank you, Miss Alina." ***, Alina smiled, eyes glistening. The video was posted online that evening, and just like that, everything changed. Donations poured in overnight. Volunteers signed up. Experts offered to help for free. The mayor called to apologize for the delays and promised to speed up the process. Alina watched it all unfold in awe. She had spent years believing that change had to come quietly, carefully. But sometimes she realized the loudest voices were the ones that made the biggest difference, and hers, along with Richard's and Noah's, had been heard. The school was going to open. All they had to do now was welcome the kids inside. The day had finally come. After months of planning, fighting, dreaming, and hoping, the Noah Foundation Learning Hub was ready to open its doors. The building stood tall and proud under the morning sun, its windows sparkling like promises kept. Colorful banners hung across the entrance with smiling faces and the words ***, welcome home. ***, inside, everything was alive with energy. Teachers were arranging desks and supplies. Volunteers were setting up toys and learning tools. Music played softly in the background, filling the halls with warmth. Every room had been designed with love, with soft lighting, quiet corners, walls covered in drawings made by students who had visited during preview days. Alina walked through the halls, checking on last-minute details. Her heart pounded. With excitement and nervousness all at once, she wore a simple blue dress and her favorite pair of flats. But she felt like a queen walking into her kingdom. This was it. She had dreamed of a school like this since she was a little girl. Watching, her brother struggled to be understood. It was real. And it was hers, not just because she helped build it, because she believed in it more than anyone ever could. Richard arrived early, dressed in a crisp suit, though his eyes looked tired. He had barely slept the night before, 4 years. He had built companies, made deals, and led teams, but nothing compared to the weight of this moment. "This is really happening," he said quietly as he stepped inside beside Elena. She smiled. "It sure is." They stood together in the lobby, looking around at the space they had created. It wasn't just a school, it was a sanctuary for kids who had often been overlooked, misunderstood, or told they couldn't do things. Here, they would be seen, they would be loved, they would be heard. Then came the sound of laughter and footsteps. Parents began arriving, holding their children's hands or pushing wheelchairs. Some kids ran ahead, eyes wide with wonder. Others stayed close. To their moms or dads, shy but curious, one boy clutched a toy train tightly, just like Noah used to. Elena greeted every family personally, hugging parents, high-fiving kids, and helping wherever she could. Richard stood nearby, watching everything unfold with a strange mix of pride and humility. He saw a mother wipe away tears as she handed her daughter over to a teacher. He saw a father kneel down to hug his son before letting him walk inside with a group of other kids. He saw joy, hope, and relief in every face. And then he saw Noah. His son was sitting in a wheelchair, wearing a brand new backpack and a big smile. His communication device rested in his lap, already loaded with new pictures and sounds. When he saw Richard, he pressed a button. The voice said, ***Dad. ***. Richard knelt beside him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Hey, buddy," he whispered. "You ready?" Noah giggled and tapped another button. The voice said, ***, yes. Richard felt his throat tighten. This was the first time Noah had ever started school without crying, without fear, without needing someone to hold his hand. He looked up and met Elena's eyes. She gave him a small nod. "He's going to be okay," she said gently. Richard swallowed hard. "I know." The official opening ceremony was set for later that afternoon. Families, teachers, volunteers, reporters, and city officials gathered outside the school. A ribbon stretched across the main entrance, waiting to be cut. Elena stood at the microphone, adjusting it slightly. She had never given a speech like this before, not in front of so many people, but she knew what she wanted to say. "I didn't grow up thinking I'd run a school," she began. I just wanted to help kids like my brother and now kids like Noah. For most of my life, I've watched amazing children struggle to be understood. I've seen them fight for every word, every movement, every dream." Her voice wavered slightly, but she kept going. "But here's what I also know. They're not broken. They don't need fixing. What they need is support, belief, love. That's why we built this place, not just for them, but with them. With their voices, their stories, and their strength." She paused, looking out at the crowd. "This school isn't about money or power. It's about possibility. It's about giving every child the chance to shine, no matter how they speak, move, or learn." Then she turned to Richard. "And none of this would have happened without Mr. Langford," she said. "It's not because of his money, but because of his heart. He didn't just write a check. He showed up. He listened. He learned. He believed in us long before the world did." The crowd clapped, and Richard stood there, stunned. He hadn't expected her to say that. He hadn't expected to feel this way. Elena continued, "But today I want to surprise him with something." She motioned toward a table behind her, where a framed document sat. She picked it up and held it high. "This school has always been his idea," she said. "But from this moment on, it belongs to me." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Elena smiled. "Trusted me with this vision. And now I'm asking you all to trust me too. To trust our team. To trust these kids. Because if you give them a chance, you'll see what I've known all along." She turned to Richard. "This is your gift to the world," she said. "And I promise to protect it, to grow it, to make sure it helps every child who walks through those doors. Richard stared at her, completely overwhelmed. Then slowly, he stepped forward and took the document from her hands. "You've earned this," he said simply. And then, in front of everyone, he hugged her. The crowd erupted into applause. Later that evening, after the celebration had ended and the families had gone home, Richard and Alina stood alone in the empty hallway. "It's really yours now," Richard said, still holding the framed document. Alina nodded. "Thanks to you." "No," he said, firmly. "Thanks to you." He looked around at the quiet classrooms, the bright lights, the colorful walls. "I used to think success was about how much I could build," he said. "How many companies, how many products, how much money. But this feels different." Alina smiled, "'Cause it is different." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I spent years trying to fix Noah," he admitted. "Trying to buy him a cure, a miracle. But you showed me that he doesn't need to be fixed. He needs to be loved. He needs to be understood. He needs to be free." Alina placed a gentle hand on his arm. "And now he is," she said softly. Richard looked at her, truly seeing her for the first time, not just as a teacher, but as a leader, as a force of nature, as someone who had changed not just his son's life but his own. "I'm going to step back," he said suddenly. Alina blinked. "What do you mean?" "I'm going to let you lead this place. Fully, completely. I'll still help when needed, but this is your school now, your mission, your legacy." Alina's eyes filled with tears. "I don't even know what to say," she whispered. "You don't have to say anything," Richard said with a small smile. "Just keep doing what you do best." They stood there in silence for a while, listening to the quiet hum of the building, the heartbeat of a school that had finally come to life. Then Alina turned to him. "There's one more thing." She said, "What's that?" She reached into her bag and pulled out a small notebook. "I've been writing a book," she said, "about this journey, about Noah, about you, about everything we've learned." Richard raised an eyebrow. "A book?" She nodded. "I want to share our story with the world, so other parents don't feel so alone, so other teachers know they're not crazy for believing in their students, so other kids like Noah can feel seen." Richard stared at her, touched beyond words. "Be honored," he said. Alina smiled, and just like that, the next chapter began. Years passed like pages in a book, each one filled with laughter, learning, struggle, and triumph. The Noah Foundation Learning Hub had become more than just a school. It had become a symbol of hope, a place where children who once felt invisible were now seen, heard, and celebrated. Alina stood at the front of the main hall one sunny morning, watching as students arrived. Some walked, some rolled in wheelchairs, some used walkers or crutches, but they all came in with smiles. Some waved to their parents. Others ran straight into the arms of their favorite teachers. One boy carried a robot he had built in science class. Another girl, who used a speech device like Noah once did, greeted Alina with a bright voice that said, "Asterisk, asterisk, good morning, Miss Alina." Asterisk, asterisk, Alina knelt down and gave her a hug. "Good morning, Maya," she said warmly. "Ready for your big day?" Maya nodded and pressed another button on her device. Asterisk, asterisk, yes. "I'm going to teach the new kids how to use the buttons." Asterisk, asterisk, Alina beamed. "That's what I like to hear." She watched Maya roll off toward her classroom, her heart full. That was the kind of growth this school was all about, not just academic progress, but confidence, independence, and joy. Behind her, the walls were lined with photos. Some showed the early days when the building was still just an idea, drawn on napkins and whiteboards. Others captured moments from the first-year kids trying out new tools, parents crying happy tears, volunteers painting classrooms and planting gardens. And then there was the photo of Richard, standing beside her on opening day, holding the framed document that officially handed the school over to her. She hadn't seen him much after that. Once the school was up and running smoothly, Richard kept his word. He stepped back. He didn't disappear completely, But he stopped being the face of the foundation. He let Alina lead. He trusted her. And in doing so, he gave her something even more valuable than money: freedom. He donated quietly, supported behind the scenes, and occasionally visited just to check in. But mostly, he let life move forward without trying to control it. Alina had taken that trust and turned it into something powerful. Under her leadership, the Noah Foundation Learning Hub grew beyond just one school. It became a model for inclusive education across the country. Other cities reached out, asking for advice, training, and support. Teachers trained here went on to start programs in their own communities. The school hosted workshops, conferences, and training sessions for educators who wanted to learn the same methods Alina had developed. She traveled too, speaking at events, sharing stories, and meeting families who had been inspired by what they had built together. And through it all, she never forgot where it had started. One afternoon, while walking through the halls, she paused outside a familiar classroom. Inside, a group of students sat in a circle listening to a teacher read a story. She peeked through the window and smiled. There, sitting in the middle of the group, was Noah. He wasn't a little boy anymore. He was 13 now, taller, stronger, and more confident. His communication device had grown with him, becoming more advanced as his skills improved. He could now form full sentences, tell jokes, and even argue with his friends about which video game was better. Today he was helping. The teacher explained the story to the younger students. When the lesson ended, the kids clapped. One little girl ran up and hugged him. Alina watched, eyes misty. Noah had come so far. She remembered the first time she met him, the frustration in his eyes, the way he would cry when he couldn't say what he meant. Oh, he was leading lessons, teaching others, inspiring people. And it was all because someone believed in him, Evan, when he struggled to believe in himself. A few minutes later, Noah noticed her in the hallway and rolled over with a grin. Asterisk, Miss Alina. Asterisk, his device said. She laughed and crouched down to give him a hug. I saw you in there, she said. You're getting really good at teaching. He tapped a button. Asterisk, it's fun. Asterisk, I know, she said. You make it look easy. Noah tilted his head. Asterisk, you taught me how. Asterisk, Alina blinked, surprised. Then she smiled softly. No, she said. You learned how together with us. Noah thought for a moment, then pressed another button. Asterisk, thank you. Asterisk, Alina squeezed his hand. You don't have to thank me, she said gently. You've given me just as much as I've given you. Later that evening, she sat alone in her office, looking through old emails and notes. She found one from Richard dated nearly 5 years ago. Greater than asterisk. I want to build something real, something that lasts. Something that helps kids like Noah and teachers like you. Asterisk, she smiled, rereading those words. Just then, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Richard. Asterisk, hey, just checking in. How's my favorite school doing? She typed back. Better than ever. Noah just helped teach a whole class today. A few seconds later, he replied, That kid is going to change the world someday. Asterisk. Alina looked out the window, watching. The last rays of sunlight stretch across the playground. Maybe he already had. Not long after that, Richard published his memoir Asterisk, The Teacher Who Gave Me Back My Son. It was an honest, emotional journey through his life before, during, and after meeting Alina. He wrote about his struggles as a father, his failures, and the lessons he had learned from a woman who changed everything. The book became a bestseller. Parents read it and cried. Educators shared it in training classes. People who had never known anything about special education began to understand. And Richard found peace. He no longer chased success the way he used to. He still worked, still invested, still created, but now it was all about impact, not profit. He started funding research for assistive technology. He helped open more schools based on the Noah Foundation model. He even started mentoring young entrepreneurs who wanted to build businesses with purpose. But the most important thing he did? Stayed close to Noah. They spent weekends together, going to museums, parks, and sometimes just sitting in silence, playing games on Noah's tablet. They talked about school, about friends, about dreams, and every now and then, Richard would ask him a question. Asterisk, asterisk, are you happy? Noah would smile, press a button and say, yes. Asterisk, asterisk, and that was enough. Back at the school, Elena continued to grow and evolve. She hired more staff, expanded the program, and even started a scholarship fund for low-income families who couldn't afford private therapy or education. She also wrote her book. It took her 2 years to finish. She called it Asterisk, where every child belongs. In it, she told her story from growing up with her brother, to her first days as a teacher, to the moment she met Noah and Richard. She wrote about the fights, the fears, the victories, and the quiet moments that changed everything. When the book came out, it touched thousands of lives. Parents wrote to her saying it helped them feel less alone. Teachers said it reminded them why they started teaching in the first place. And students, some of them now grown, told her they had read her words and finally felt proud of who they were. One night, she sat at a bookstore signing copies, surrounded by smiling faces and grateful hugs. A young man approached her, holding the book tightly. I read your story, he said, and I just wanted to say thank you. Lena looked up at him. For what? For showing me that my voice matters, he said. Even if I speak differently, Lena smiled warmly. It does, she said. Always. As the years went on, the Noah Foundation Learning Hub continued to grow. It opened branches in other cities. It partnered with universities to train future teachers. It launched online courses for parents and professionals around the world. And yet, no matter how big it got, it always stayed true to its roots. Because it wasn't built for fame or fortune. It was built for love. And that love lived on. In every student who walked through its doors, in every teacher who believed in them, and in every parent who finally saw their child shine. One spring morning, several years after the school opened, Alina stood outside the building. Watching the cherry blossoms fall, children played in the courtyard below. A group of teenagers practiced a dance routine. A teacher led a nature walk. New family arrived, nervous but hopeful. Alina smiled. This was the dream she had held on to for so long, and now it was real. She pulled out her phone and sent a message. Asterisk, asterisk, it's still amazing every day. Okay, moments later the reply came in. So are you. Asterisk, asterisk. She chuckled and looked up at the sky. Everything had changed, and nothing had ever felt more right.